Hello and welcome to this webinar. In the following few minutes, I'd like to talk about some difficult topics, and I know we don't have much time. So I will do that rather schematically. I hope you will forgive me. And to do that, I will rely on a few slides that you will see on the screen. The topics I'd like to touch upon are immense, honestly. Privacy, human dignity, human exceptionalism, but I hope in a few minutes to draw a line between all of them and a connection and see how they have been transformed by our information society, the digital technologies that surround us, and the sort of new personal identity that we're also developing on life when the online and the offline are merging. The beginning of all this will be a matter of legislation. A long time ago now, you can see in April 2016, the GDPR was approved, and despite what we might expect, human dignity doesn't really appear in this fundamental piece of legislation, which of course is on data protection and therefore on our personal data and privacy. There is a passage there, and it's the only passage where human dignity appears. As you can tell by reading on the slide, it's in terms of safeguarding data subjects' human dignity and their legitimate interest and fundamental rights. Now, this first appearance may seem to be working against any suggestion that there is a connection between human dignity and privacy and digital technologies. That is not the case. Much later, when the European Data Protection Supervisor, part of the European Commission, had to explain the connection between and the grounding of privacy and human dignity, that is the text. Again, as you can see, I highlighted some bits of it, especially the one in the middle where the text reads, "Privacy is an integral part of human dignity." So the impression you have, at least from a European perspective, is that dignity is not in the text of the GDPR, in the legislation, in the discourse about personal identity, because it's the perspective from which we interpret personal identity. This perspective means that the protection of privacy, especially, as I said, from a European context, should be based directly on the protection of human dignity, sort of first-order grafting to the trunk represented by human dignity, not indirectly. Not, for example, through other rights like freedom of expression or property. With a quick illustration, from that perspective, the view that I am my data, that my data is also part of who I can describe myself, identify myself as, means that in my body is closer to what we mean by my data than in my car. It's not property, it's not ownership, and this of course would require a whole big long lecture on where we come from in terms of privacy based in the 19th century on a sense of property, ownership, and so on, and a whole debate about can we sell our data, etc. But not for today, I'm afraid. Today I want to push a little bit further and discuss, well, if what we are saying is that the right to privacy is grounded on human dignity, what is human dignity? Are we just kicking the privacy can down the road of human dignity? I don't think so, but certainly it requires another step. Human dignity is often grounded on human exceptionalism, and it's human exceptionalism that is a bit of a challenge today. It's been challenged for a while. This is something I've been describing for some time, the four revolutions that are behind our reconsidering of human exceptionalism. Copernicus, Darwin, Freud put the first two in line, had already displaced our identity, our sort of sense of importance from the universe, from the animal kingdom, and from the centrality in our mental sphere. Well, Turing, as it were, brought about a fourth revolution in terms of not being at the center of the infosphere either. We're not the only smart agents, and I don't mean that there is such thing as artificial intelligence. That seems to be an oxymoron as far as I'm concerned. But there are artifacts that can drive better than us, that can park better than us, they can buy online better than us, they can play chess better than us. And that has displaced us from the center of this special space. After 4 revolutions, therefore, it might well be that we should consider ourselves as incomplete agents, sort of neither angels nor brutes. We're not robots, we would say today. The terminology comes from Pico della Mirandola, the Oration on the Dignity of Man, manifesto, so to speak, of Renaissance. If we look at human being as humanity as work in progress, open software, again, to be more contemporary, an unwritten text, not something that is at the center of the chain of being or any other space, but doesn't really belong to it in any possible way, then human exceptionalism becomes a matter of being not at the center, but at the periphery of the moral discourse, at the service of whatever the needs and demands, morally speaking, come from the receiver of our moral actions. Now, this shift from an agent-based to a patient-based ethics, and as I would like to argue here, a third step, a relation-based ethics, means that we should reconsider our exceptionalism in terms of fragility, and therefore care for and attention to that fragility. We are special because we are nature's beautiful glitch. For some people who are believers, they wouldn't call it a glitch, they would call it a project. It's not a bug, it's a feature. I don't know. I'm agnostic in the sort of philosophical sense of the word, but I like to think of ourselves as something extraordinary, but not because we are more, better, or extra, but just because we are outliers in the ordinary life of this universe. I don't think we should be here. We are a bit of a beautiful glitch, as written on the slide, and as such, we are very peculiar. Being beautiful glitches, we are, for those of you who know something about Java, we are nature's non-fatal exception. Normally, failures fail, to be tautological. We are the failure that did not fail. We manage to survive despite being self-destructive, for example, as we know humans can be. Now, being a beautiful glitch, a non-fatal exception, today we increasingly look at ourselves as information organisms, meaning by this that we are not, of course, just information organisms, but that is the right level of abstraction at which in the 21st century we look at ourselves. After all, even the European legislation call us data subjects. We've seen ourselves as mechanisms, we've seen ourselves as biological organisms, as mostly water and something else, chemically speaking. Today, it makes a lot of sense to look at ourselves as informational organisms. As such, our lives and identities are informational, and therefore the lives and identities of a beautiful glitch that is an information organism is not only precious, is malleable, is fragile. That is the kind of exceptionalism that I'm talking about. And that exceptionalism means that the protection of privacy is the protection of personal identity. In other words, the chain that goes from exceptionalism as being a beautiful glitch to human dignity as what respects the fragility and uniqueness of that beautiful glitch, all the way to privacy as the protection and enhancement of human dignity as what captures our uniqueness. Well, that is the line of thinking that has informed a lot of my work, and I think provides a robust perspective on those 3 fundamental concepts that I started this brief webinar with. Ultimately, zero privacy means that we will be pinned down like a butterfly on the open life onto the mounting board of a profile. It will be essentially being forced within a space, so to speak, that does not belong to us, remain an open project in the Renaissance sense of the description that we saw with Pico della Mirandola, remains one of the fundamental characteristics of being a human being and a beautiful glitch. That's why the conclusion can be a little bit dramatic. Zero privacy is dehumanizing. It does not mean that all the data that are part of us need to have the same degree of respect. Of course, like bits of our body, we lose them quite happily. My hair, my nails, but some other bits are exactly who I am. Some bits of information constitute my identity, and therefore they represent bits of my human dignity and the uniqueness of the beautiful glitch that we all are. That's why we need to protect privacy, and we need to do it legally and ethically speaking. Privacy must be defended as part of human dignity. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this particular webinar. Goodbye.